Hello and welcome. My name is Christophe Clermont from Printess, and today I want to talk about the wedding card example, which you can try on the website. And if you have your own account, you simply can click on it as a new template, open it, and you will see exactly what I have open here, the wedding card template. It's a very basic greeting card template, so to say. When we go to the buyer side, it is a good example for using rich text. As you might see in other examples during the series, there are multiple templates using text where you click on it and then you in the form field on the right hand side you change the content. Like the child books example, that's a very good example for that. Sometimes you want people to edit in a text frame, like you do it in Word. So you simply can click on each of the text frames, you have a cursor, you can select the word, you can change the color if you want to, things like that. This is a good example for how to build a template like this, because all of these frames are actually, well, like we call it multi-line or rich text frames, where the user can select and edit the text and make their own changes. So if the customer wants to add another date here, you can go simply for 8 p.m. and then say something special. So now we can select the 8 p.m. and we can make it like the others by selecting the semi-bold version of the font. That's pretty much it. Plus, the user can also click on the flowers here. And it's not an uploadable card like others, like the photo cards. It's more like, depending on the corner, they can select the color of the flowers. So I can select a yellow flower over here, but I can select a different yellow flower over here. And if I go to the inside, I'll be able to change this flower as well. There are all 3 different selections of that. And this is what I want to talk about. I also want to talk about the selection of fonts. So when I am selecting something, I have only a range of 4 colors here. I have only a range of a couple of fonts here. So how to do that? Let's have a look at the flowers first. So the flowers are image frames, slightly rotated here. In the buyer restrictions, we see that the user can change the content, but as you see here, the buyer upload is disabled. That means that the user cannot upload their own image there. If I turn this on, for example, go back to the buyer side, now the plus appears, which indicates that I can upload my own images. So let's quickly turn that off again, because otherwise our design will suffer. And we have a range of other groups here, like flowers right, flower left, and flower center. For that frame, we selected flower left. This group comes from the image tab. So whenever you upload images, with a little folder button here, you can create new groups. And then you can name them. So it's flower right, flower left, and flower center here. And we actually put all the different flowers we had in that folders. And depending on which position the frame has, the user has a different selection of flowers so that they never interfere with the text frame and the design. So that's all. So having a look on that flower will show that this is now set to flower right. So this is how we control for each image frame individually which selection of flowers it offers to the buyer. When we click in the text frame here, we have seen in the buyer side that only a certain range of colors is available. These colors are actually coming in the colors tab from the buyer's color section. So clicking on the frame, going to the buyer side settings, we see that the user can change the color, but the color groups are only the buyer colors. So the buyer colors contains only 4 colors. So that is the solution why there are only 4 colors displayed in the buyer side. And same things happens with the font groups. We have one font group, buyer fonts here, which are all there by default. So to make life easier for you, you only throw them into that folders and they're by default pre-selected. So you don't have to set this up all the time. But when we go to the fonts, we see we got 4 fonts in the buyer fonts selection. That's basically the whole setup here for that card. You might have noticed that this page zoom is not like we want to have it, because it's leaving a lot of space around this. And this is what we can control by going to the basic settings, and there we got page zoom to pasteboard. The pasteboard is the area around the elements. So when we go turn this off, it automatically zooms to the page itself. So now on the buyer side, this card looks much nicer. So we can go to that frame, and let's say somebody removes this entirely and writes in complete new names. So something like this. It looks now different, but it still can be reconstructed by basically selecting the font and going to pink again, and it looks like before. So that's the idea of that. And it also does something else, because when I enter more text here, let's say there are 3 people marrying. So that would be a little bit tricky, but it just fits in the frame. And as you see, when I enter more text, the text extracts from the center to the top and bottom. So let's have a look how this is done. Going back to the admin side, here in the ruler menu, we will see that this frame is set to auto size. So that means it extends depending on the content. And it also set to center focus point. So that means it extends itself, but it's pinned to the center of the frame. So when the text grows, the text frame grows as well from the center to the outside, which gives us some vertical formatting. So it's a fairly simple example of a card which works perfectly well in the buyer side. One thing more, because if you open the same card on a mobile device, you will not be able to edit inline. That's really too tricky to do that on a mobile phone. So the text frame itself is still editable, but it will be split apart in paragraphs. And what you can do here in the desktop, you can actually either you make your browser window smaller, or if you don't want the rich text editor but still want rich text, what you can do is you can turn off the rich text editor in the buyer side settings here. And when you do so and go to the buyer side again and click on the frame, you will get a split of all paragraphs with separate formats, which is quite cool, because now the buyer can actually change the name without being able to do rich text editing, and still the formats are kept. So we can also say and it looks perfectly well. So this is a second way of working with rich text frames in the buyer side, especially when you combine that with other elements like single line text frames or shapes you can color. This is extremely powerful because they all will be grouped. So let's say I have just a frame here, and this frame should have the ability to change its color. And if I group this together with a text frame, so I go on and group this frame, and then I'm going back to the buyer side, it will collect me all the things together. So there's just one frame I selected. I can still change the text. I can change the color here. And that will happen now, no matter if you turn on the rich text editor or not, because these frames are grouped. So the buyer can only select both frames. So when I'm going back to the buyer side, I will see the same picture here, because I have that 2 frames grouped and the buyer cannot select the text frame individually. That's just a little bit about Printess and about designing awesome products for selling in online shops, but maybe a good introduction into a very nice and simple example. So hope you join all the other tutorials and hope to see you next time. Bye bye.